Hello, welcome to episode 2 of The Gain Line. I'm Dan Nicholl, your host for a series brought to you by Scrum Pro that looks at the world of rugby, and in particular, the world of rugby as seen through the eyes of young people who are hoping to make rugby a way of life going forward. It's an opportunity as we talk to various stars of the game to find out how they got into rugby, what challenges they faced, what really worked for them, and what allowed them to become the superstars that we worshipped on rugby fields around the world. We kicked off with a shark last week with Mr. Ndungani. We now have another shark. We stick to Durban and a ranging loose forward who's played all over the world, who was one of the most exciting attacking loose forwards South Africa has ever seen, and a man who's got some wonderful experience in the game of rugby. Before I introduce him though, just a quick introduction to Scrum Pro. If for some reason you don't know what it is, it's a platform that very simply allows players, particularly young and up-and-coming players, to put onto the internet their stats, their ambitions, their player positions, basically their rugby CV, what they can do, everything from their size to their achievements, and the hopes and dreams they have as rugby players. And it's also the opportunity for rugby clubs and rugby communities to identify players, to see who is out there, and possibly bring some talent into their particular rugby fold. So marrying the clubs with the players and allowing the rugby community to get to know each other a little better and create more opportunities for young rugby players. And by extension, we're hoping to create some opportunities here today, some opportunities to learn from the experience of a former Springbok who has got such a rich rugby history. So let's say a very, very warm welcome to Ryan Kankowski.
Hi, Dan. How are you?
Extremely right. It's great to see you. Great to see a big smile on the face, because smiles are a little hard to come by at the moment. Some difficult times around the world, but particularly here in South Africa. What have the last few months been like for Ryan Kankowski?
It hasn't been too bad, you know. Obviously, we were based in Malta for a while. My wife was working that side. So I was lucky to be, well, we were kind of kicked out of the country and told to get back home quite quickly or we're going to get locked out. So I was fortunate to be that side of the world. You know, but lockdown hasn't been too bad, you know. A roof over your head, internet, TV, you know, we've been lucky. So I'm very fortunate.
Part of being fortunate comes from having looked after yourself and had a very successful rugby career, but when you've worked extremely hard for, and it's a lesson that we're trying to push across in these Gain Line episodes, which is that a rugby career, no matter how talented you are, doesn't come without a lot of commitment and a lot of hard work. So let's go back to the very start of the Ryan Kankowski story. I still remember the first time I saw you as a young player on the field, full of excitement, full of enthusiasm, and full of the ability to make opposition defences look very flat-footed. How did you get into professional rugby? What was the journey into it, and what was the point where you thought, you know what, I'm quite good at this. Maybe I could do this for a living?
I don't know. You know, that at school, people always ask, like, what do you want to go? Do you want to, you know, play for the Springboks and stuff? You never knew, you know, you're just having fun at the time. And when it kind of got very serious for me was when we came up to St. Stithians Rugby Festival in Johannesburg, and a man by the name of Hans Skriber approached me after one or two, I think we played Glenwood or someone here in Joburg, and they said, would I be interested in coming to the Sharks Academy? And then, you know, it still wasn't quite real, you know, till the end of the year, because you had a couple of months left of school, and, you know, got up to Joburg, up to Durban, and, you know, you realize that there are a lot of players that are actually coming. You know, every year there's a massive bunch of players that rock up, and you're still part of club rugby, you're an under 19 rugby player, so it's not quite real yet. And yeah, it took I'd say like 2 years before it actually became a real thing, you know, where you knew you could actually make it in rugby, and you started getting a few opportunities. So I'd probably say 2 years into Durban, you know, things started getting a bit more serious in rugby. Then I had to seriously commit, and you know, it's a lot of time, you know, with the team, and then it's all the extras off the field, and it's quite hectic.
You've always come across, both on and off the field, as a very relaxed guy, a very happy guy. It's always, you always give the impression that rugby came quite easily to you. But I sense that behind that image of the relaxed, happy-go-lucky player, there must have been an awful lot of hard work, an awful lot of commitment, and a lot of sacrifice when your mates were maybe going out and living the lives of 19, 20-year-olds. You had to live a slightly different life.
I actually had this conversation the other day, with my wife. She's, comparing to everyone else, saying, listen, you miss out on varsity, you miss out on all the holidays. You get to go on Christmas trip with your family, but you get a 2-week break, and, they tell you, listen, if you pick up 1% body fat, or you get slower in your fitness test, because they do one before the holidays and then after the holidays, you get a massive, it was like a 10,000 rand fine. And at 21 years old, it's big. So it's a holiday, but not really a holiday, and, under 21, things might have changed now at the Sharks, but you woke up, you went to gym for like 2 hours, an hour and a half. You had another little session in between, like a skill session that was like 2 hours, an hour and a half later. Then you had a field session after that, going to early afternoon, and you had to go play club rugby, after that. And then if you wanted to do anything extra, you didn't quite have much time, during the day. But then I had guys like Kevin Stevenson. I don't know if you know him. He's been around Durban for many years. He used to help me out like on Sundays, and it was crazy, So there's a lot of little extras that do go into it. No one really sees you doing them, but it definitely helps. And then it's just being ready for that opportunity when it comes. There are many brilliant players that come. We used to have so many players every year coming in behind us that are going to take your place. They're the next best thing. They're the next best thing. But, you see them arrive. They come from SN 19 or SN 18. They think they're the best. And then the following year, another guy comes. And the following year, another guy comes. And the Sharks has, 5, 8 men that come in every single year. And I think that's something that a lot of the young players don't realize. There's this endless conveyor belt of brilliant players. And if you don't, take that opportunity seriously, and, it's gone. You get a chance, and a guy could be 3rd or 4th in line, and 2 injuries, he's in, and he takes it with both hands, and then you're old news. So it's opportunities are hard to come by, and when you get it, you need to be ready for it.
You made a huge amount of sacrifice to be able to pull off the career that you did. When you look back now, in hindsight, was the sacrifice worth it?
Absolutely. I wouldn't change it for the world. I got to meet unbelievable people, got to travel the world many times over. And, it set me up, in life today, but I was very fortunate when I was young. I think I was 20. I just, kind of made it onto the scene, and an old player, Warren Brits, took me down the road. He kind of took me under his wing in Durban, kind of, showing me the roads and being a proper mentor to me. He took me down, I think it's Chartwell Drive in Durban. And he took me past 5 or 6 houses, and he was pointing out, like, this rugby guy used to own this house. This rugby guy used to own this house. And, sometimes I was like, why? What do you mean used to? He goes, well, and the problem is, like, your rugby career is only 10 years, if you're lucky. And a lot of these guys will come in and they'll max out their whole salary onto a house. And you don't realize that the bond's 15, 20, 25 years. Then they don't invest in anything else. They try and pump everything out, live the dream, massive house. And, by the time your rugby career is over, there's nothing left. You can't afford to pay off the house because you haven't quite managed things properly, or you haven't, it's quite a scary little wake-up call, and I was very fortunate to have it when I was, 21 and starting off. So it changed my entire way of, thinking about, life after rugby, injuries. If you make it a full career, you're actually extremely lucky. So, I was very fortunate to have some great mentors growing up at the Sharks. And they definitely helped me with where I am today.
It is such an important lesson for young players to learn, because you go from pretty much out of school into a phenomenal paycheck compared to the pocket money you might have been getting from your parents, and the media want to talk to you, and you're the superstar, and keeping perspective is so difficult. What I love about your story is that you took not just the broader lesson from Warren Brits, but you took that quite specifically, because now down the road, with the rugby career having come to an end, property is actually where you find yourself.
Yes, that's exactly it. I kind of started off smaller, trying to pay off as much as possible while playing, so that all I used to think about was, after rugby, having paid off as much as possible, and being able to support myself going forward, and then a job kind of being something you could pick if that you love. I don't want to be forced into something. I see, there's so many guys that get forced into different things, and they're really unhappy, after rugby. And I think it's a massive thing for players. They struggle with, all the attention. Like, you get things thrown at you left, right, and center, and then, within like, snap your fingers, it's gone. So it's, it was a very valuable lesson I learned early on, and it definitely helped me, get to where I am today. And, property is pretty easy. The management side is not so easy, but I wouldn't change things for the world.
Such great lessons to pass on, and I really hope that if you're a young player and you're getting into professional rugby in particular, you listen to this, because the off-the-field stuff governs so much of the stuff on the field, because you need to be in the right mindset to be able to make the best of yourself as a player, which you did. Let's have a look at that playing career. What are the first memories of playing for the Sharks, of coming up against players you'd probably only seen on TV, or maybe even had posters of up on your bedroom wall? Those early years of being a professional rugby player.
It was magical. You're this young player. You just do everything. You train flat out. You get on that field, and you're just so excited about everything. And like I said, we had such great senior players in those years, and you're playing with your heroes. It's guys you literally watched a few years prior. You supporting them flat out. It was a roller coaster. It went from straight from school. I was like under 19. I think I sat on the bench for under 9. No, it wasn't under 19. It was an straight under 20. I sat on the bench for under 20s, and then my under 20 year went to under 19, under 21. So you kind of sat on the bench again. And then the following year, I was in the squad, and Dick kind of said, "Listen, Ryan, go play some sevens, see how it goes, get some international experience." And, then I trained flat out. And then he gave me a chance. He said, "Listen, come, take a chance down." I think my first game was in Cape Town. And, from there, it literally happened so quickly. Within a year, I was playing, for the Springboks. So it was like, it happens so quickly when it does happen. And you can look at all the players today, like, they come in, they just get a chance, and they, the guys that take it with both hands, it's all in your hands, and it's, the guys need to cherish it, look after it, because just as quickly as you got it, it can be taken away. A lot of guys take it for granted. You see guys that come in for a year and then they're gone. So many players get in trouble with cars. I think the paychecks are going to keep on coming. It can never happen to them. An injury can't happen. They can't be bad. I think they get set up. It's like being in school. Your rugby career is almost exactly the same as being in school again. It's like you put in a little bubble, you get breakfast, everything gets done for you. So it's quite a tough thing to get out of, once you're done with rugby. It's a massive wake-up call, and, luckily I have some great people around me helping me with that. And,
What do you think made the difference for you? You came in, you had a coach in Dick Muir who clearly saw something in you and wanted to give you that opportunity. But as you mentioned earlier, there are 4 or 5 people in every position coming into these big unions every year on top of the existing guys. There's a very strong club rugby structure in Durban as well. There's a huge amount of competition. You got through that. Yes, you're an enormously talented athlete, but you needed to have something more to be able to see off all of that competition. What do you
Yes.
think that was for you?
You know, like when, like for example, with sevens. So when Dick said go play sevens, there's another coach. He was at the emerging sevens, Charles Lowe, and he kind of said to us, we did like a fitness test. He said, listen, if you can run, I think it was 140 on the bleep or something, you'll be in my squad. You know, in my training squad. You know, for sevens. So you kind of went away from that. You trained at under 21s. You did all the stuff at club rugby, and then you went and did massive fitness. You know, like I remember having cones. I messaged Kevin Stevenson like straight off the bat. I was like, Kev, can you help me out? He was training the Sharks at the moment, and he came out. He used to set up cones. I used to run and run just so I could make, you know, that sort of be fit enough. You know, and then when it happens from there, if you've done all the groundwork, it's going to sound weird, but it's easy. You know, like because you go and do fitness within the team and you've done it already. You've got the massive bank of like stored up energy, if you want to say. Just, yeah, it helped me so much going forward. Because going from sevens kind of made it easy going into 15s, fitness wise. You could jog most of the fitness, so I was very lucky on that side. But it's massive hard work, you know. Like I said, there's so many players coming in. You've got to do, you know, if you just keep doing the same as everyone else, you know, what's going to differentiate you from other guys? It's a lot of the extras, you know, being fitter, you know, putting in like massive amounts of energy. Some guys come in, they just cruise. I think because they were good in under, you know, S under 18, they're going to be good the following year. You know, they take the foot off the pedal. It's like you got to do what you did the year before plus more, and then it's the same thing you did the year before plus more. You know, if you want to keep better, keep getting better. Otherwise, you just like stagnate in that one spot. And you know, it was. You know, we had some brilliant coaching staff that just kept pushing us. You know, we had guys literally, Mark Steele walking around with a plastic pipe in gym. You know, if you sat down, you didn't do something, he hit you with it. You know, it was a joke, but it was, you know, it kept you going, especially the youngsters. You know, he pushed us and pushed us and pushed us, and you know, you got the best out of every single one of us.
We're going to have a lot of people watching here who are hoping to make a career for themselves in rugby, and they'll be full of intent, they'll be full of enthusiasm, they'll be full of determination, but they're going to face challenges. And it's from those challenging times that we learn the most about ourselves and our ability to really make it. We know your high points. We watched many of them. You had this remarkable career, but you will have faced times where things didn't go quite so well. What was the hardest point of your career, and how did you respond to it?
You know, the hardest point was probably, you know, missing out on the Rugby World Cups, you know, when, let's say 2007, where you picked for a team, or not really picked, but you're doing so well, all the guys around you are kind of getting picked, and then you kind of miss out. Then the following World Cup comes, you're in the plans right up until the World Cup, and then you're not so much in the plans anymore. You could have broke my hand literally 2 weeks before the announcement, you know, happens. You know, that was probably one of the tougher ones. And then there's always a point where, you know, within a union, the guys don't really, I wouldn't say pick you, but they, you know, things change. You know, new players come in, a new coaching staff comes in, and, you know, things get, you know, even though you're training really hard, even though you're doing it, and the team might not be gelling on the field, you know, so then people start looking at so many different things that could be wrong. Is it the players? Yeah, I'm talking in circles here, but like when I went to Japan, it was quite tough because you're in the Sharks, you're in the Springboks setup, and I remember sitting with Rudolf Strali, because like the Sharks, we had it was so bad that year, everyone was getting injured. We were really struggling, and you weren't sure if you're in the Springbok mix or not. picking up the phone. You chat with Rudolf Straley to kind of see if they can find out if you're still in the Springbok mix or not. And then you get told, no, you're not in the mix. And that's what kind of fueled my thoughts in going to Japan. And then you end up having a brilliant year. So you commit to going to Japan, you sign everything, and you've made peace with it. It's going to be Sharks and Japan. That's it. And then you end up having a brilliant year at the Sharks. And then those same people that said you're not in the plans anymore, all of a sudden phone you and say you are in the plans. But now you've already committed to two sides. So it's, in rugby, all you can do is, if I can give the guys advice, is, find those people around you that you can trust. Because the same supporter that puts, is patting you on the back, the one weekend is going to be those guys putting a knife in your back the following weekend. Find the people you trust, listen to them, and just keep putting in the hard work. Because there will be ups and downs. You will get injuries. I've seen some brilliant guys. Just if you look at an example like Pat Lambie, on top of the world, and it's out of his control. Knock on the head, and done. It can be taken away from you so quickly. So, it's rugby. It's crazy. It's a crazy game that we love so much.
I'd like to chat to you a little bit about your time in Japan, which has become such a mecca for rugby talent, where it was solely Europe. We're now seeing more and more players look at Japan as an option, and last year's Rugby World Cup has put Japan under even more of a spotlight. It seems to be a country where you can go over and play a good standard of rugby, certainly, but also have an extraordinary cultural experience, extraordinary life experience. And for me, that's such an important part of the ability to move overseas. Yes, you can often earn a good salary. It can be very lucrative to do so. But I think there's so much beyond just the rugby that can add to your life experience by going somewhere like Japan.
Japan is, I tell everyone it's the opposite of South Africa. Everything works. It's clockwork. It's phenomenal. The people, they look after you wherever you go. I made some amazing friends, within the team, and like the ladies that look after the team. We went over now to stay with a few of them during the World Cup, just to see them. I've had friends that have flown over here and stayed with me a couple of the years they come over. So like once you're friends there, you make they're brilliant people. And the team, it was quite a wake-up call to me because I started off at Toyota Industries Corporation, and you arrive there, you're flying high. We actually came back from losing that final, that Super Rugby final in New Zealand. So it's quite tough, and you sit with a guy. He's like the top three of Toyota, and he sits down. He's like, Ryan, you have some big supporters from the Sharks. You have supporters in South Africa. He says, but I don't care about any of them. He says, what we want is like Toyota. The teams are part of the company. You're a company employee, and he's like, the employees play for the rugby team. And if the rugby team does well, the company supporters that support the rugby team, they do well. Therefore, their work ethic will be better. So if the team does well, the work ethic is better and the company does better. So that's the only reason here, is to make sure that the team wins and the company employees are happy that the company can do well. And it's like, it's a different way of thinking. Rugby there is just about the company. It's massive, company against company. And, it was a massive eye-opener to see that there's no media worrying about what you're doing during the week, trying to, just ambush you in any possible way. There's no bad-mouthing between anyone. It's just get there, perform on the field, done. That's all that matters, rugby-wise. And then culturally, it is the most, if anyone has a chance to go and have a look in Japan, it is the most magnificent country. From beaches on the one side to snow on the other side, foods, the history. They're so proud of the history that side. It was absolutely magnificent.
It clearly added a new dimension to you as a person and opened your eyes to a different world. What about the rugby side? I think of a player like Stefan Blanche, for instance, who went over, played in the Northern Hemisphere, and came back having enhanced his skill set enormously by fielding wet, muddy up and unders in dark and rainy fields in Wales, and later in his career in Belfast. The skill set, the appreciation of the game of rugby, the breadth of what you're able to do on the field, was that something that you felt was also enhanced by playing in a different environment?
Definitely. You know, like Japan, I don't know if you saw in the World Cup, they run everything. You know, they got massive high tempo rugby and they wanted to look good. You know, they just run. So like from the first time I got there, you have to kind of help them a bit. You know, it's like you 5 meters from your line and they want to run everything. You know, and you kind of got to say to them, listen, guys, yes, you know, I'm all for, you know, pretty rugby, but there's a time when you need to, you know, kick out and then we can run from there. You know, and they're like, no, we're going to run. Or you got a penalty on the 22 in front of the poles and they want a quick tap. You know, they want to do they want to have a scrum and run it, you know, because tries are obviously better than kicking it over. And, you know, we were still a second div team back then. So it was quite an adjustment on that side. But, you know, skills-wise and, you know, fitness and running and, you know, it's very similar to, I'd say, the New Zealand rugby back then, where it's just moving off the ball, it's fitness, it's do so many skills to try and sharpen everything. And, yeah, I think it definitely helped me on, you know, enjoying rugby again and playing some fun brand. And, you know, it's everything that you're there just to have a good time on the field with guys that also want to have a good time. They want to, you know, have a lot of fun. So it was quite cool.
That was your time in Japan. You've referenced the time with the Sharks. I never felt we saw quite enough of you in a Springbok jersey. There were issues of injury. You also had the misfortune of playing at a time when there didn't seem to be an abundance of loose forward talent and perhaps certain coaching perspectives on the type of loose forward that was needed for the Springboks. But you still did have a reasonable run in the national jersey. What was that very first game like, running out onto the field with your Springbok jersey on?
I can't put into words how awesome it was. You know, it was literally straight after the 2007 World Cup in Wales. Everyone was flying high. It was actually, you know, quite a scary story for me because we had an off season at the Sharks. So we had finished, you know, you just watched the World Cup and we were on holiday I was on holiday in Cape Town. We hadn't trained in like 3-4 weeks. You know, because they always told you, go away, do nothing. And I was actually sitting at a pub with friends. And I got up from the pub, I went into the bathroom, and then my phone rings. And it was Peter Jooste, the Springbok selector. And he's like, are you Ryan? I was like, yes. He says, are you injury-free and fit? So I was like, yes. He says, okay, cool, I'll phone you back. So I was like, okay, that's weird. So like I walked to my friends to kind of see who's pulling a prank and who's joking on me, you know. And no one's saying anything. So I was like, okay, cool, we're going back home. You know, we're going to plan on going out or, you know, see what's going on. And next thing we get in the car, we start driving. I get phoned again. So, okay, cool, you've been selected for the Springboks. Your flight leaves 8 o'clock tomorrow morning from Durban. So I was like, you're still, you know, not convinced. I'm like, I'm in Cape Town. And he's like, okay, cool. Well, you're going to fly from Cape Town 8 o'clock tomorrow morning. You know, make sure you're ready. And then all of a sudden, you know, you start... Yes, then the panic hits you, you know, like then I had Dick and I had a few guys phoning saying, don't worry, you'll be fine, Ryan, you'll be fine. And you flew up to Joburg, met up with the guys that literally won the World Cup. And we went to Wales. And that whole week was like a blur, you know, it's just supporters everywhere. It was unbelievable. Then running onto that field, I still think that Millennium Stadium, Cardiff, is one of the best fields in the world. You know, the stadium, the roof that covers, the supporters sing from before you even kick off right through. And then I'll even manage to score a try. So it was a really special moment with the with an unbelievable bunch of rugby players. So I was very fortunate to have that opportunity.
Yeah, it's schoolboy dream stuff, that, isn't it?
No, it was. It really was. It was, it was unbelievable. And it was nice. And the coaches kind of just went out there and, have fun. Go out there and have a great time. So it was awesome.
Did you find when you played Test rugby, it was a noticeable step up from the level of rugby you'd played before?
It's you can't actually even compare it. If you think of how did they compare it to me? Like they said, so if you go Currie Cup rugby, you might have one or two players that are the best in their position in the country. Then you go to Super Rugby, and you might have 6 or 7 players that are the best in their country. But when you go to like Test rugby level, every single person that's in that team is the best in their country. So when you go against the other guys, it's like, those mistakes get cut down to like almost none. The defense, everything is kind of, it's such a big difference, every sort of level, intensity, the physicality. Test rugby is, you can't compare it to anything. And then you play against teams where they are just, it's a massive step up. But, when you're young, you don't really notice it. You just flat out the whole time. Only when you sit down and think about it a bit later, you actually realize how extremely tough it was.
You're not a small person. You train extremely hard. Even today, you look like you could run out onto the rugby field and cause some serious damage. Was there anybody in the course of the career where either you looked at them and got, sheesh, that guy's probably big, or you got up from a tackle from somebody and looked around for the remainder of the building that had clearly fallen on you?
Not so much when I was playing for the Sharks and Springboks. It was more just before that, when Dick kind of said, go play sevens for a while. I think I was weighed like 100, and I was 195, and we played against a team called the British Army, and not one of them is British. Like they're all these massive Fijians, and you run out there, and I'll never forget it. It's just like, you look at these guys, they're like a head taller than you, they're wider than you, they're like tanks, and you just sit there going like they can run around, they're quick enough to run around you, they can run over you, and then you try and tackle them and they just pop the ball off to the side. That was probably one of the scariest times. I was like 19 years old, you rock up against this guy that he's at least 130, and you're just like, wow. But yeah, other than that, being on the field, you're never really worried, because you got, guys on either side of you that, it's you trust yourself and the team, and, even if you do make a mistake, you got someone covering you, and you'd cover them. So I wouldn't say in 15s, there was a guy that, when you saw him coming, you're like, wow. Maybe if I played against that massive 8th man, I forget his name now, that he played for Samoa, I think, against the guys in 2004, that huge guy. Maybe you'd think twice about running in front of him, but other than that, it was all good.
I think what that basically says, Ryan, is that you were the guy that everybody else used to think that about. Here comes Kankowski.
No. I remember there's so many people that bump into me, they're like, wow, you actually, you're quite big. We've always thought you're a lot smaller. So I said, well, the rest of the team are like 2.5 meters tall and weighing 130. That's why you look so small most of the time. I think, some of the guys in our team, I mean, I wouldn't want to tackle Willem Alberts, a Jean Day still coming on the corner. We are very fortunate to have, some very special guys, in our team. And, I wouldn't want to change it for the world.
There was an ulterior motive to that question. I was genuinely interested in the answer. But also, we've got a lot of young guys coming up, and the history of rugby in South Africa, particularly in the last pre-Russie area, there was a real focus on everybody has to be big, they have to be strong, they have to be able to bench press several buckies at the same time. It was that kind of of approach that you had to be in the gym all the time. And then we look at players who've come through, and guys who you would have played with. I look at somebody like Brent Russell, for instance, who can fit into a shoebox and was one of the most dangerous players South Africa ever had. For a young guy coming through, be they an 8th man, a loose forward like yourself, or a scrum half, a fly half, a wing, how much emphasis should these guys be putting on get into the gym as much as possible, get as big and strong as possible, versus maximizing the other skills that are so important to the game of rugby?
I think that was probably I wouldn't say one of the worst things I did personally was like, when I played my first cap for the Boks, I was 101 kilograms. As an 8th man, you expected to be 120 plus. So then over the years, they try and bulk you up, and it's, every player is different. You have an ideal weight. Yes, you should be in the gym getting stronger than what you are, kind of getting yourself, but I'd never recommend someone going in and trying to pick up 10 kilograms for nothing. A standard thing would be 1 or 2 kilos a year, just slowly picking up the muscle mass, which will happen normally for a youngster coming out of school. But I'm definitely against bigger is always better. We had some brilliant players. Even myself, I was maybe tall, but wasn't always the heaviest. We had some brilliant guys that were way smaller than everyone else, and we competed against the best of the best, and we won a lot of the time. So whatever skills you're good at, I'd say pump a lot of time and energy into that, making sure that you are unbelievable at it. Gym wise, yes, I think gym is important, but it's not the end of the world. I wouldn't say being a massive bus is going to help you. It'll probably end up being worse for you going on in the long run. And skills, it's that X factor. I think if any player has a bit of something that differentiates themselves from someone else, it's definitely will get you noticed, and then it's up to the hard work and effort, on fitness and at training fields to make sure you stay there. It's very easy to be picked for a team, but it's extremely hard to stay there for many years. So it's a lot of hard work, dedication. If you're a small guy, I wouldn't, unless you're like 20 kilograms, I'd suggest a different sport. But if you've been playing rugby, your body's used to it. It's the one thing I say to a lot of guys is you need to be realistic about it. If you're playing, especially when you get senior, if you're really struggling at rugby and you're hoping to play for the Springboks in the following year, it's not a realistic goal. Set proper goals for yourself, realistic ones that you can sit back and it's a genuine, speak to your parents about it, to try and see where you stand, and believe, go out there, have fun, and enjoy every second that you can, because within a few years it's gone. So just enjoy the ride while it's there.
I love the honesty. I also love the pragmatic advice. It's very simple to understand. It's very simple to work out and to follow. If I can sum up then, before we bid you farewell, Ryan, the advice that you would have to our young players, to our guys on Scrum Pro who are looking at a career in rugby, it's find people you can trust around you. It's have that work ethic. It's balance what you do in getting towards rugby, and it's making sure that although you hope that you're going to go on and be that star, have something to fall back on, and when you do get that first paycheck, don't blow the entire thing on a brand new car.
Yes, exactly. It's you see so many things, and it's so tough trying to speak to the young players now, because they're on top of the world. Who are you to tell them how to spend their money or how to do this? And yes, you can enjoy it, but spend half your paycheck on something instead of the full thing. And definitely, I think balance is key, and just enjoying it. It's a privilege to be able to go out there and play rugby, and then to get paid on top of it. There's a very few amount of players that, well, it's quite a thing. There's a few amount of players that get to make it in rugby. So if you do have that opportunity, and you put your hand up, grab it with 2 hands and, cherish it. It's a special, bunch of players that you get to be with. It's a massive opportunity, but, like I said, I saw many players that, they come in there and it's one small injury, no one even touches them. They're just running on the field. It's a slip and rugby career over. So, balance is definitely key. Prepare for after rugby. It's, I played at the Sharks, I think, for 13 years, and, it's already, you can barely remember it. You got some massive memories, but it's gone, like it's such a small portion of your life going forward. So, enjoy the ride.
It speaks to that maxim of preparing for the worst, but hoping for the best. Ryan, you're a terrific example of something I think has managed the career so well. Perhaps not as many Springbok caps as other players, but I think you've managed out of your career. Just a fabulous rugby playing legacy, but also with some fantastic lessons to pass on to the next generation of players. And I cannot underestimate the value of listening to what Ryan said, listening to his life lessons and applying them to the start of your own rugby career. So Ryan Kankowski, thank you so much. Thank you for the entertainment you gave us on the rugby field. Even as a Stormer supporter, when I was sometimes on the other end of Ryan Kankowski, it was a joy to watch you play, and you played with such enthusiasm, such freedom. It was great to watch, and with the Springboks as well. And it's also really nice to have a story of somebody who's come through the rugby career, found a new space, clearly comfortable in it, and has managed things so well. So thank you, not just for all of that, but also for sharing your time with us today and sharing such valuable input to our young rugby community on Scrum Pro.
No, thank you for having me, Dan. I really appreciate it. Anytime.
So there we go. Ryan Kankowski, Springbok rugby player, one of the all-time Sharks greats. There are still streets named after him and kids being named after him on a daily basis. And somebody with just such great insight. If you haven't had a look at Scrum Pro, then please do. It's a fascinating space that allows you to take your rugby CV, to place it online, to understand more about who you are as a young player and what your opportunities might be, and for the rugby community, for clubs and for unions, to find young talent and to bring them in to your system. So go and have a look at Scrum Pro. Thank you very much for joining us, for spending time with myself, Dan Nicholl, and with Ryan Kankowski. And we'll be back again, episode 3, with another rugby great sharing some life lessons and helping to guide our next generation of Kankowskis to rugby greatness. From everybody at the Scrum Pro team, thank you and goodbye.